Welcome back to another episode of Fill the Screens podcast. Today we will be talking about the movie Sinners. I literally just got out of the theater watching it, and I figured, hey, might as well crank out an episode and put my thoughts out there. For those who haven't seen it, I will say when you go into this movie, there's a lot of comparisons from Dusk Till Dawn to where you're watching a movie and then about three-fourths through, vampires come in. That's literally what this movie is. So I feel like a lot of people that didn't like this movie, which isn't very many because this movie is getting a lot of high scores. If you go into this movie expecting to be completely terrified or this is the scariest movie ever, you will be disappointed, I think. So I think it's important that if you haven't seen it, in my non-spoiler review, just keep in mind that like this movie, it's getting a lot of high scores because it's a very well put together movie with a lot of good scenes in it. It's not necessarily scary, at least in my opinion. Once the vampires come in, like it does get pretty gnarly. But again, you gotta wait a big chunk of the movie for that to happen. With that said, I did think it was a pretty good movie. I think there's some spots that could be nitpicked, which I will do. But overall, I enjoyed it a lot. Again, it's a well put together movie. And it's fun. Michael B. Jordan, he does an awesome job acting. He plays twins. He plays two different people. And it really does seem like they're two different people. So if you're a fan of Michael B. Jordan, this is a great movie to watch. There's times where this feels like a time period movie. Sometimes it feels kind of like a drama. And as this movie's building up, like it's almost like this drama about them trying to put together this Juke club. And it takes place back around the Great Depression. The Ku Klux Klan is still kind of around during this time, so you see elements of that. And overall, it's a pretty good story through the first three-fourths of the film, and then things go crazy at the end. But through this good story, like it's well filmed, it's the dialogue's good, the characters you'll really like them. There's a sense of music. They like to emphasize music in this movie, and when they do that, it makes a lot of scenes better. And there's one scene in particular to where they use music, and if they did it wrong, it would be kind of silly, but they put it together pretty awesome. So that's my non-spoiler there. I'm going to go into spoilers now, so if you haven't seen it, click off, come back later. And that's my warning. So leading with the spoilers, I'll talk about the beginning. The beginning, you see a church, and you see this young man drive up. Throughout the movie, they refer to him as Preacher Boy, so I will just call him that. Preacher Boy drives up, and he kind of stumbles. He's all bloodied. He has scratches on his face. You can tell he's been through a lot. And he kind of pauses at the church, and the doors fling open, and he doesn't enter the church. The preacher looks around. He's like, "Oh, son, come in." And finally, like, he walks into the church, and he's shaking, and he's holding a beaten guitar, and you could tell he's just troubled, and the preacher's trying to talk to him. And during this moment, it's like showing these flashbacks, which are probably the scariest part of the film. I actually jumped on the first one. I was like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, the flashbacks are pretty scary. It's just like a glimpse of a vampire for like 1 second. And just those little glimpses, like they do look terrifying. And I'm like, oh, we might be in for a really scary movie here. But then it kind of cuts away and has you wondering, because, with him pausing at the church doors, you kind of wonder if he's a vampire or not. So that's kind of a cool beginning, because you're like, man, like, what if he's turned? So as this movie's progressing and you follow Preacher Boy, you're kind of wondering in the back of your head, was he a vampire in the beginning or was he not? The next thing I'll say is they do a great job with these characters. Like, as you meet them, it's not very confusing at all. The characters are well built. They give you background for most of them. And usually this little background building, it makes you care for all the characters as the film's going. We see Smoke and Stack, who is Michael B. Jordan. He's playing both twins. But even though it's one guy playing them, Michael B. Jordan does a great job to where whenever you see these twins later on in the movie, you know exactly which one's which. Smoke is a very conservative, straightforward guy. If you get into a bar fight, you want to have Smoke on your side. He's very intimidating, his personality, to where Stack is kind of more laid back. He's always kind of smiling. He's more likely to crack a joke amongst the twins than Smoke is. Smoke's just pretty straightforward, carries his gun around. I mean, both of them could whoop some people. In the movie, they say they come from Chicago. They worked for Capone. In the very intro scene where it shows both of them, Smoke wearing a blue cap, Stack wearing a red cap, it is a pretty BA shot of them. Just them kind of standing there by their car waiting for this guy to show up to buy this little like warehouse. It's kind of like, okay, like these characters are going to be great. Before they even say anything, you just get the gist of it. Now, as the twins go around town, I mean, since they're back from Chicago, everyone still knows them. Everyone knows better to mess with them. There's a point to where Smoke goes into town. Some guy's trying to steal from his car, and he just shoots him in the butt right away. No hesitation. Then he has a partner, and the partner's like, I'm so sorry, I won't do anything. And he shoots him anyways, and he goes, well, I can't let you run around, be telling people that you stole from me without anything happening. But, I mean, even though he shoots him, he still pays to get them all stitched up and fixed. So it's kind of funny the way it all works out. But you just know as the movie's going, like, no one wants to mess with the twins. Smoke and Stack then go off, picking up the other characters that we're going to see throughout the movie. One of them being Sammy, otherwise known as Preacher Boy, the guy we see in the beginning. Preacher Boy, his dad is a preacher. But, you just get the gist that he does not want to do that. He wants to go out and live. Even though his cousins, which are Smoke and Stack, they advise him not to. But you could tell he's got big aspirations. While they have him, I feel like he kind of starts off talking just very quietly, like, hey, Smoke, hey, Stack. But then, like, eventually, once they get him to sing, he has a very good voice. He does a I don't know, that was terrible. But, it's kind of a bluesish type of music he likes to play. Very good singing voice. He knows how to play the guitar like no other. They pick him up. And then once they get him, they go throughout town. They then pick up Delta Slim, who, again, he can play the piano. He's a good singer. This guy's a lot older. He's an alcoholic. He's kind of comedic relief throughout the movie. They find another singer, Pearline. We'll just call her Pearl. You can tell Preacher Boy immediately likes her. Then they go and Smoke finds his wife, who they've had some problems, named Annie, to cook for the Juke joint. Smoke and Annie, they had a son that did not make it. The kid passed away. There's little flashbacks of it. Nice emotional moments. The local Chinese shopkeepers, Grace and Bo, their suppliers, they're pretty well set up as characters. They do a cool one-shot sequence as they're picking them up. It's just really cool looking going through town. Then they go and meet the field worker Cornbread to be their bouncer. Cornbread's this really big dude. He seems super friendly, very likable character. And then Stack meets his old ex-girlfriend Mary, who passes off as white. I believe they say part of her is African-American. But there's a lot of tension between Stack and Mary. Stack does not want Mary to even come near the Juke joint, but she is persistent. I kind of speed ran through the characters, but I wanted to give them a quick intro before I start getting to everything else, just because throughout this movie it does a great job building up, like I said before. And even though there's not a lot of horror sequences, like, it does not suffer at all. Like, you're into the journey of it. You're like, oh, I wonder how the opening of the Juke joint's going to go, which, from the little teaser in the beginning, you're probably like, it's not probably going to go great, but let's see how it does. So on the opening night, things start going, people are flooding in, and then they decide to let Preacher Boy play a little song. The song itself is pretty awesome. I'm not even going to try to imitate it like I did earlier. But, it's pretty good. But then the part that I really liked, and it actually made me laugh when it started, because they start narrating it, and they're like, the music that was playing, it kind of rejuvenated the spirits from the past and the future. And then as they are saying that, a guy comes out, like, because everyone's dancing around in this club, And then all of a sudden, a guy enters the frame like in a leather jacket with an electric guitar and just starts going ham on it. And I started cracking up laughing. And I'm not laughing at the movie. I'm laughing just because it's awesome. Like, I just did not expect it. I was like, what is going on? And then, like, as this music's playing, like, it's like building up. And like more and more people are entering the picture from like the past and the present. There's even a DJ that comes in at a certain point. There's like girls that come in twerking. It's just crazy because again, like there's instruments being played from a long time ago, present time, future. There's people from like different cultures. I talked about how the Chinese characters, there's some Chinese artists that enter the music scene. It's a complete bop. And like during the entire thing, I was like, this is awesome. Like I did not see it coming. I did not expect it. But by the end of it, like it literally shows the barns on fire, like it's a barn burner. And the entire place like burns down while they're playing it. It's like a big metaphor. But while that's happening, you see the vampires outside, like watching them play because the music drew them in. It was a really cool scene. Another thing I liked is the vampires. It's three of them. It started with one. He ended up going into a couple's cabin. He turned both of them, so now they're following him around. But they're outside the club, and Cornbread, he won't really let them in. He's like, what do you guys want? Because, they're white. And they're like, oh, we just heard the great music. We want to come in. And he's like, oh, I don't know about that. And then Smoke and Stack come out, and they're just like, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. You should probably came back from where you came from. And there's even some characters that are like, just let them in. It's fine. And they're like, oh, we can play music too. And they start playing this like little bluegrass song. And they were great singers. Like it's just something you didn't. Any vampire movie you see ever, like it's always a suspenseful thing, which that's where it started. And they're like, well, let me show you what I can do. And you're kind of expecting like some dark turn, but then they just start playing and they start singing bluegrass, and they're just kind of walking around as they're singing, and they seem like the most harmless people ever. But smartly, Smoke and Stack, they're like, yeah, no, you guys are great, but we don't really want you in here. Like we don't feel like this is your crowd. So they turn them away. I talked about how music's a strong element in this film, but this movie also doesn't shy away from sexual topics. Stack constantly talks about eating girls out, tells his cousin Preacher Boy to do that. He ends up going down on Pearl in the movie. You see that. There's a point to where Smoke and his wife, like they go to town. You see that. And then sooner or later, the vampires do start to get their way in. And unfortunately, Stack's ex-girlfriend, they turn her. And, she ends up getting into the club because she's like, oh, can, you let me in? Someone lets her in. She goes into the club. She walks up to Stack, and I think her quote is, you can steal all this liquor, because they did steal it. You can steal all this liquor, you can steal whatever, but you're too afraid to steal this pussy for a night. And then Stack's kind of like, oh, all right, let's do this. And then they go to town. And while they're doing it, like she starts drooling like crazy. And he's like, whoa, like you're drooling, you're slobbering. And I think her quote is, you want some? And he's like, yes. And she like spits into his mouth. Yeah, I don't know. It's just stuff you don't, it takes you by surprise sometimes, but I found it kind of funny. I don't know, it didn't hamper the movie any. I will say during that sequence, though, I was pretty surprised that she got Stack. Because while I'm watching it, I'm like, man, all these characters are great, but I really hope Stack makes it. Like, he seems like the chill twin. He's definitely at risk because Mary was turned, and I didn't expect her to get turned so quickly. I thought she'd be one of the main characters. But once she's turned, I'm like, okay, Stack's at risk here. And whenever she starts straddling them stuff, I was like, oh, Smoke's going to barge in, and tell him to get back to work or something. And I feel like the movie almost kind of hints at that. But then they do the spit scene. I'm kind of like, oh, Stack might be gone now. Like, that spit into the mouth like that might have been his final bullet there. But she bites him anyway, so he's gonna turn. They walk in on her, biting him and eating him. She runs out. And then there's kind of the sequence, and which I really liked because vampires can't go into the club unless they're invited in. There's a sequence of because they kick everyone out once Stack is bitten and dead, and people start turning. Like the vampires get everyone at that point. And the entertaining part of it is, when people are turned, they approach the club and they're like, "Yeah, just let me in." And the character's got to make the decision of, do they let him in or do they not? And Cornbread's one of them that gets turned, and he actually kind of cracked me up because he's like, "Yeah, let me in, man." And Smoke's like, "You come in here all the time. Why are you asking for permission?" And he's like, "Well, for hospitality. Like, can't we all be kind around here?" And starts trying to reason his way in. When Stack ends up turning, luckily Smoke's wife practices voodoo. She had like some garlic juice around, poured it on him, and smoke came off of that. And I guess all the smoke from the scenes to which the vampires were involved in were practical effects. That's pretty cool. And I will say one more fantastic moment is the vampires, once they all turn, there's about 5 or 6 people left in this club. And the vampires themselves put on a song, and it's Irish themed. The main one's doing like a river dance, I think it is, like a jig. And that song it might be a bigger bop than the first song. I don't know. Both of them are pretty good. But I was like, man, I have no idea where this movie's going, but I am enjoying the music bits of it. All of that, the tension of them trying to get in. Everything up to this point was fantastic. Now, here's my nitpick. So, in the club, they're all freaking out. They're all kind of trying to tempt them to invite them in. Most of these attempts do not work. But Bo, the Chinese immigrant, he ends up getting turned, and he confronts Grace. And when he's confronting Grace, he's like, you just need to let us in, let us get you. Like it's salvation in a way. You should come with us. And they're like, no, we're not doing it. You're not really Bo. And it's working. But and then the lead vampire, which I gotta look for his name, Remick. I think it's Remick. Remick kind of looks at Grace and says like, "Oh, don't worry. Like we'll just head into town. We'll attack the townspeople. And we'll get your little daughter too." As soon as that happens, you can tell Grace is shaken. Like she's gonna cave, and she screams the words, "Come in, motherfuckers!" Because she's like getting like a human cocktail ready. Like she's ready to fight. But as soon as she screams that, you're kind of like, "Ah, oh, fuck!" Like it's about to go down. And it's cool. Like they kick open the doors, the entire like vampire horde comes in. The survivors, which there were like 6 of them. I mean, I'm pretty sure like it did not seem like it was any more than 6. At the tops, maybe 8. But the survivors and the horde, they look at each other, and then they like both rush at each other. Like that's cool. But then like once they meet, it becomes this chaotic fight scene, and you see these vampires start chomping on like 7 people. Like you see like blood shooting out, you see people biting other people. And as this is happening, I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't have that many survivors. Like who are they killing? And I'm like just kind of like looking around. I'm like, I'm pretty sure some main characters just went down within a second. And the thing is, there weren't. Like, because all the people left, like, they were kind of main characters. And all those main characters, as they're going, as they start dying, you kind of get, like, the big last scene for them. Like, some of them make sacrifices. Like, you go upstairs, I'll fight them off. So you see all of those people die. But in the beginning parts of the battle, like, it looked cool. It did. But, I mean, like, you literally see in this big, blind, bloody mess, like it seems like 10 people got killed. And it's like they didn't have 10 people. At the most, they had 6. So I don't know who the vampires bit or killed. It's almost like they needed just bodies to like create the carnage to make it cool, which I get. But if you're going to do that, make some of the people hang back whenever, the others leave the juke bar. because I was just like, I don't know who's getting killed, and it became like such like a chaotic mess. Like I wasn't sure really what's going on. Then the main characters are getting like their final moments, and that went by like really quick too. I wish the fight scene, the scene where they're clashing, was just a little more clear. Granted, I know they want people to die because they're like, okay, a horde of vampires rushing in. Some people are going to go. But we also want to give our main characters send away scene. Um, so that was like one of my biggest nitpicks. I was like, okay, whatever. Another thing I'll kind of nitpick is I feel like they kind of depowered Remick a little bit. In the vampires itself. At the beginning of the movie, he's flying. He seems like he has super strength. Like it seemed like there was no end to their capabilities, but then Preacher Boy ends up killing the final one. Like strikes him in the head with his guitar. And then the sun rises up, and it's kind of like, man, this guy was so powerful. Like he escaped so much. He escaped an Indian tribe in the beginning of the movie. And like this is kind of how he goes. I get you have to do it. We do need to reach an ending at some point. They spent a long time building these characters up. Maybe it would have. I don't know. I don't want them to take away from the beginning of the movie. I also don't want a 3.5 hour movie. So I get it. There's constraints and stuff. It has to happen. But then another just small nitpick there. Another thing I wondered though, because whenever the sun came up, Remick went into flames. All the other vampires went into flames. And it made me wonder because in the beginning of the movie, like the sun was going down and you see Remick like go towards this house, but I'm pretty sure the sun was still up. I don't know because like he was smoking and he looked hurt from the sun, but I was under the impression that if the sun was up at all, the vampires would go up in flames. So in that beginning sequence to where he approaches the clan members and turns them, he is kind of out in the sun. I need to rewatch that scene. Maybe like it was more dark than I thought, but I do recall him smoking. So I don't know. Like I don't really know the rules of the whole sun and vampire thing. Like is it partial sun? You're okay. I don't know. Just a nitpick there. The ending. We end up getting Smoke because Smoke and Stack. They end up confronting each other. They fight. It kind of cuts away. Smoke's like the last one left except Preacher Boy. Preacher Boy goes to see his dad, and that's where it meets the beginning of the movie. Smoke then hangs around the warehouse, and the guy he bought the warehouse from, he was like the leader of a KKK unit. So the KKK people show up the next morning, and Smoke literally gets a machine gun. And when he's at first getting his gun and stuff and all that, I at first thought they were going to go like a monster hunter type route. Like, well, I'm going to spend the rest of my days hunting these vampires. And I was kind of like, oh, come on, don't do that. Like, it was, we just don't need that arc. But he gets his gun and the KKK show up. And I was like, okay, like this is going to be pretty cool. And he ends up gunning them all down. And while he's doing it, like he's shot and he starts to see his wife and the baby that he lost, and she's like, you can hold him. And it's a nice closure for Smoke. But then the overall ending, because then like the credits roll, and if you don't stay, like while the credits start rolling, you miss a pretty big part. It made me like the movie even more. And that's Preacher Boy. It shows him when he's an old man. Like he's traveled around, he's a musician now. He's had a lot of popularity, and he's kind of sitting in a bar. And Stack and Mary, both of them who are vampires, they walk in. And they have like the most pleasant conversation. Stack and Mary are like, hey, like that, you played great. And he's like, I don't know about that electric stuff, but like your older stuff though, it's fantastic. Like you're one of the best players I've ever heard. And they're kind of just bouncing stuff back and forth. Stack and Mary offer him immortality. And he's like, I don't know if I want to stay around that long. And it's just kind of like a nice little message that, people live their lives differently. But something I wondered because, when Stack and Mary come in, I'm kind of like, oh, like, is this going to go bad? It didn't at all. Again, it's pleasant. But I wonder the metaphor, because there's a metaphor for the vampires and what the director's going for. I didn't Google it. I was like, I'm just gonna say what's at the top of my head, and if it's true, cool. If I'm way off and I'm wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure like the whole metaphor of the vampires are supposed to represent white colonism Or you know what? I'll just go as far as to say I don't want to just say white people, but I kind of thought the vampires represented white people in a way. Because Preacher Boy, his music was so good. The lead vampire, Remick, he kept telling him, he's like, I want to turn you so I can bring your music in with us. Like, we want your music. And I feel like that's something that white culture is always kind of criticized for, like stealing from black culture. So I thought that metaphor was there. But I also thought, and if they meant it in this way, I think it's pretty cool. This movie takes place back when, the tensions were very high between the races. And I feel like the vampires, being violent towards, the people in the Juke joint, like it almost felt very black versus white. It was very conflicting. It was violent. They didn't have good feelings towards each other. And then later on in the movie, society kind of mends together, and the vampires aren't attacking Preacher Boy anymore. And I was like, maybe it's kind of commentary on how far along we've came in race relations. I don't know. That was just kind of my take from it. I know it's not perfect, but it's not like how it was back then either, which is good. There's progress being made. And I feel like maybe that movie was kind of encroaching upon it. Now, granted, the vampires aren't attacking Preacher Boy because Stack promised Smoke that he would leave Preacher Boy alone, so that's what they did. And I'm guessing that's why they didn't go up in flames, is once they made that promise, Stack told Mary, let's get out of here, and they weren't around when the sun came up. So yeah, that's my little gospel moment for that whole end sequence there. I liked it a lot. I liked this movie a lot. Those two nitpicks that I had, that's all I really got for it. A lot of times I try to like just find stuff to where I'm like, what? That didn't make sense. Like what? You try to critique things, you try to praise things. I feel like that's what makes a good movie review. If I sit here, I'm like, it's awesome. It's totally awesome. Like, you'd probably just be like, okay, calm down. It's good to find the good in the bad. So, I know I didn't point out a lot bad because I do just think it's a good movie. If you can think of other things, feel free to comment them. Or if you agree with a lot of the things I said, tell me in the comments. But yeah, if you're still listening, thank you so much for listening to this. If you could give this a like, it gets it out to other people. If you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? So yeah, this was a lot of fun. It really was. And I'm glad I went and saw it. It was, again, it's a fun movie. If you haven't seen it and you're still listening, and even though I spoiled some stuff, go check it out, because I think it's definitely a lot better in theater than it probably would be at home, just because of the whole music vibes of it all. So yeah, that's my review of Sinners. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.